Check Podcasts. Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and this is Chamber Chats, coming to you as always from the podcasting studio at Czech Television, one of our chamber champions. I would like to begin by acknowledging, as always, that I live and work on the unceded ancestral territory of the Lekwungen-speaking nations we know as the Songhees and Esquimalt. And Chamber Chats is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, and by Seaspan Victoria Shipyards. So, when you talk about harvesting the bounty of the ocean, for generations we've known that. For millennia, First Nations have been doing it. That is the harvesting of fish, of shellfish, of gooey duck, of all of those things that we know to be alive in our oceans. But seaweed has been a part of that too, and you've probably heard lately that that is beginning to happen on Vancouver Island. And that's because of a company called Cascadia Seaweed, and we're going to talk with a couple of the principals of that organization right now. Bill Collins is the chair of Cascadia Seaweed, and Mike Williamson is the chief executive officer. Gentlemen, welcome and hello.
Hello, Bruce.
Howdy, Bruce. Good to be here.
And good to have you here. So, as we said before, when we were planning this, let's begin with the outcome. Why are we harvesting? Why are you growing? Why are you ramping up the seaweed industry? Bill, I'll start with you.
Yeah, we're ramping it up, Bruce, because as you can and your listeners are well aware, times are changing. We have to bring new products to market that are produced in harmony with the planet. And we've taken too much, and it's time to stop that and to deliver good, wholesome products that we need. And as a result of that, we identified seaweed as a natural bioresource that could make a difference in the products that we consume today.
So, Mike, when you tell people what you're doing and people learn more about it, they must wonder, why has this not happened here before? Well, I guess in some ways it has, but why has that not happened up until now?
The majority of seaweed cultivation in the world happens in Asia, and in the last 5 to 10 years, the Western world has started to get on the bandwagon of cultivating and harvesting seaweed. I think, as Bill mentioned, the earth is under a lot of pressure. Other natural resources are declining, and folks have started to turn to seaweed, realizing it's a very valuable asset. It can be grown easily. As it grows, it improves the ocean in which it grows. And if you harvest it sustainably, you're actually improving the ecosystem and you're doing more regenerative work. We hear lots of things about the circular economy. We hear lots of things about the blue economy. And in the last 2 or 3 years, these have all come together in a perfect way, perfect coincidence. And that's sort of what spawned seaweed farming.
There is a vast universe of uses for this product, which we're going to get into as we go along here. But gentlemen, let's talk about this from the business point of view. How do you start up a business like this in seaweed? Mike, I'll stick with you for this. How does this all start up and get going?
Well, we're fortunate to work in British Columbia, where there's an existing aquaculture industry with finfish and shellfish, and seaweed's sort of the third leg of that triangle. So communities along the coast and our First Nations partners are used to seeing activity on the water that uses the water in a responsible manner. Secondly, the water in British Columbia is at the right temperature. It's cool, it's very clean, it's very pristine. And thanks to ocean currents, we have a lot of nutrition in the water, which supports a lot of growth. So these items have come together, and British Columbia is a great jurisdiction. And furthermore, for getting products to market, we're at the nexus of rail, sea, and road connections. So it makes connectivity between us and the market very favorable.
So, Bill, you must have met a little bit of resistance or skepticism from some people thinking, seaweed, why would you? I don't eat sushi. Why would I eat seaweed? Why would I use seaweed for anything? Tell me about that process and how people came around to understand this better.
Yeah, well, in 2019, there was almost 8,000 tons of seaweed imported into North America from Asia. At the same time, we have an abundance of seaweed on our coasts, although it is under stress, to be sure, from climate change and an ever-changing ocean. So seaweed, if you looked at it when we first started, we said, what would be businesses to exploit that where Vancouver Island has a global competitive advantage? And we looked at industries such as forestry. We looked at clean tech because of the wealth of really smart, innovative engineers. We looked at cultural tourism because folks would love to be able to share in the stories from coastal zone, particularly First Nations stories. When we looked at aquaculture, we said, you know what? This is a great industry from the perspective of it employs a lot of people, both directs and indirects, and it's delivering low carbon impact, high value protein. However, when you start a business, you have to figure out how you're going to fund that business through the startup phase until you're revenue generating. So we thought, well, foreign direct investment is really important. But if we were to say solicit investment from say a person in South Korea and they Googled British Columbia and aquaculture, you would see the great debate about open net pen finfish farming. So it was a bit of a risk for us. However, when you peel back one layer of the onion, you see shellfish, and the third leg of that stool is seaweed aquaculture. And when we dug into seaweed aquaculture, we found no less that it is good to do in the ocean because you're providing ecosystem services, you're providing you're providing a hedge on biodiversity in a changing planet. But at the same time, you're delivering products that are really important. You know, Bruce, in Europe, for example, synthetic products are being banned at a faster rate than organic solutions can be provided. Seaweed can provide that. So when we did peel back the layer of the onion, we found we have a global competitive advantage being here in Vancouver Island, and it's our job with our First Nations business partners to take advantage of that and to get these beautiful products to market.
And Bill, you mentioned about sourcing capital and financing and offshore and people looking at it. Mike, was much of this money that was able to start this up actually domestic money?
Our first round, friends and family, was all local. In fact, on the streets of Sidney, we get stopped by some of our investors and they ask, how is it going? So we did a classic initial raise of friends and family, mostly in the Victoria area, Sidney, British Columbia, and a little bit further afield in Canada. British Columbia has a good venture capital investment climate, and folks can get tax credits for investments. The government was favorable for that, very responsive, and we had no problem for the initial raise.
Okay, so all seaweed is not the same. I want to talk about that next. We're talking seaweed today with Cascadia Seaweed on Chamber Chats, and I also realized that I didn't put my Moosehide campaign pin on, so I'm going to do that right now. Here we go. Okay, we're talking about seaweed with Cascadia Seaweed. Bill Collins and Michael Williamson with us today. So seaweed isn't just seaweed. There's a whole bunch of different kinds, right? So Bill, I'll start with you. Tell me about the variety and the spectrum of products and plants that you work with. And they're not weeds either, are they?
No, they're not weeds, and they're not actually plants either. They're algae.
Okay.
There's off the coast of British Columbia, there's about 600 species. There's about 12,000 species globally. We've got the Goldilocks zone of brown kelps, which is the major seaweed that we farm. And you know, globally, there's probably a dozen browns, maybe 15 to 20 brown kelps that are farmed. And so there's so many undiscovered uses for seaweed. We believe it is a product for the future. But today we're taking advantage of seaweed for the markets that exist in the world today. Specifically, in our case, agricultural products for cow feed and for plant support through biostim or through a really basic liquid seaweed extract in supporting plant growth. That's our niche today.
Okay. So, Mike, when we talk about that whole spectrum of different types of seaweed, what is used for what? What goes where? What's food? What's otherwise? I mean, it comes down to what the species is, right?
Sure. Bill mentioned 12,000 species, largely divided into reds, browns, and greens. And each class of seaweed has different principles. If you think of seaweed, let's imagine seaweed along the edge of a coastline. Half of its life is out of the water as the tide is out. Half of its life, it's deep underwater. In the summer, it's hot. In the winter, it's cold. So they're very robust plants, as described earlier. They're not really plants.
Right.
And subsequently, where they grow and how they grow has given them different properties. Some of them are high in alginate, which is great as a binding or a covering. Some of them have properties like carrageenan and agar-agar. Our brown seaweeds are rich in fucoidins, which can be used for human health, post-operation. Some of them are higher in proteins. Some of them are higher in things like iodine. So the trick is to understand which of the seaweeds are cultivatable. Then is there a process to grow them on lines like we do? Do they grow in sufficient biomass over a growing season that you can do it economically? And then is it possible to process it? We would have all heard about sargassum in the Mediterranean and Florida coast swamping the beaches. There's companies now looking at this waste seaweed and seeing if they can convert it into functional proteins or even biogas. And I just want to make one point very clear, Bruce, because there's often a lot of confusion about it. We are not wild harvesters. We actually take a spot in the ocean, license it, build a farm with ropes and floats, plant it, and we only harvest what we plant. Other folks get licenses to responsibly harvest small amounts of what Mother Nature grows, and they use that for their own products. But we are cultivators, and we only harvest what we've planted.
Yeah, so let's pick up on that. Bill, you guys carry executive titles within Cascadia, but you're also the guys that are on the boats, and you're on the water, and you're wearing the rubber boots and the overalls and all that stuff. So tell me about, because you guys do this personally. This is your work, Bill, correct? This is what you do.
Yeah, we started out to ensure that we fully understood the business from stem to stern. And the only way to do that is to get wet. In British Columbia, that's a given. On the water, anytime, it's mostly a given. So we started off as being deckhands for people that were better at, say, driving a boat than we are. Although Mike's got many more years than I do at driving boats. His boats were mostly underwater, and I prefer to stay on top. Essentially, though, you have to muck in. Fortunately, we've been able to attract the world's best team of scientists and engineers and marketers and business folks to take advantage of this business. You need that. You need folks that aren't afraid to get wet or to get their hands dirty.
You make a good point about Mike having spent time under the water, and you've spent time on top of the water. I want to just delve a little bit into who you guys are. So, Michael, you and I first met actually through the United Way when you were the base commander at CFB Esquimalt and you were the campaign chair. But your background is in the Navy. Tell us about that.
Right. So as we started this business, it was interesting, Bruce. We started talking about our backgrounds, and I did some very quick math. And it turns out I've worked on, around, over, and under the water for 40 years. And Bill has a similar history with the water. The ocean is unforgiving, and you can have the best design for a farm, the best plans to go to and from that farm for port. But you really need experience and knowledge of how the sea behaves if you're going to try and harness or benefit from being around the sea. As Bill said, we've seen all kinds of weather. Some days it's flat calm, some days it's stormy. We also have some four-legged crew as well. We had a recent team out, in fact, yesterday, seeding farms, and the pictures coming back into the office were four-legged friends, dogs wearing life vests and suitably assisting our team. So when people talk about sea dogs, in fact, at Cascadia, they're actually dogs.
And Bill, your background is in sort of marine tech, is my understanding, but you've been involved with a number of different ventures, right?
Yeah, I'm a marine geologist by training and spent the first half of my career doing international science, which allowed me to see the world from my East Coast island home to eventually end up in my West Coast island home. Bruce, it's really important to understand here that we are people that work on the sea. We come from coast, even though Mike's a Nova Scotians, which is essentially a Newfoundlander that couldn't swim. We have a lot of respect for the ocean, but as importantly, we have a lot of respect for folks that live on and near the ocean. And I'm speaking particularly here of the coastal communities of British Columbia, and particularly the First Nations who have worked on the water, extracting the bounty that nature has to offer in a very respectful way.
Yeah, recommend everybody to go to the Cascadia Seaweed website to check out more about who they are, what they do, how they do it, and why they do it. So what we're going to do next is talk about the harvest. When you take it out of the water, what happens then? On Chamber Chats today, we're speaking with Bill Collins and Mike Williamson, who are involved with Cascadia Seaweed. So, okay, you guys have done what you do. You plant. Plant is the right term, I guess, right? You grow the seaweed, your own designation, then you take it out of the water and you put it in the boat. Bill, then what happens?
Well, then you have to get it to market, and it's a slimy, wet mass of biostock. It's good slimy, wet mass of biostock, but it's a slimy, wet mass nonetheless. So you have to get it stable. Seaweed doesn't like being out of the water for any more than 6 to 8 hours to 12 hours, so you have to stabilize it, get it into a condition whereby it is able to be processed. Last year, we took 50 tons out of the water, and with the solid support of Hub City Fisheries in Nanaimo, we were able to sort the seaweed and get it into frozen blocks. And Bruce, it was amazing to see, from something that was started with a blank slate 4 years ago to seeing production workers on a production line in a fish plant working on our seaweed was really wonderful to see. Next year, we're taking 300 tons out of the water. We hope to be processing it so we don't have to freeze it, because freezing it is energy inefficient. We believe from a wet slurry we will be able to press the water out of it and therefore create agricultural products from both the pressed liquid and the residual solid. Once you have that, then getting it into an industrial market is going to be the job of the marketing and sales folks who will want to partner with distribution organizations that will get these products into the hands of farmers.
An important point there that Bill touched on with Hub City Fisheries. We have the industry in British Columbia where folks are used to working with products from the sea. So a company that was dealing with finfish in a CFIA approved facility, the next week they were processing seaweed and they didn't miss a beat. It was something coming down the line. They knew it was a food product. They knew it came from the sea, and they were able to adapt to this different biostock just like that. And that's one of the advantages that British Columbia has.
I was going to say, man, keeping that processing local and close to home but that's economic development, that's job creation.
Absolutely.
I've actually been a little bit involved with you guys. I'll make it clear I'm not an investor, so I don't have any vested interest in this. But in your early days, I was proud to be able to help you connect with some people who took things forward with one of your First Nation partners. So, Mike, tell me about that.
So, First Nations partners come to us for a variety of ways, introductions like you did and others. We have a lot of inbound interest. The First Nations partners that we work with are fully on board. They understand the benefit of what we're doing, and we understand the benefit of what they're doing. So it's always a two-way street. We always try to make sure that there's a fit between the communities we want to work with and their interests. We never go in with solutions. We listen to what the problem is. We listen to what their challenges and goals are. And if there's a fit, then we can do business. So it's nice to be part of something that folks want to contribute to and work for the next century, as Bill mentioned earlier.
And we can't overlook the fact that Indigenous peoples and these First Nations have been here for millennia, Bill. They've been living here. They knew about this stuff long before we did, right?
Yeah, in fact, when we first started the business and tried to figure out who we were going to partner with, one of the first things we thought of was, well, if Asia are delivering the lion's share of seaweed coming into North America, then we should perhaps go looking for partners in Asia, because why reinvent the wheel if you've got somebody that had done it before? But, we sat back a second and thought, why go that route? First Nations communities in British Columbia have been taking seaweed out of the water, using it for medicines, using it for food, using it for other materials forever. We should really be thinking about First Nations as partners before we ever think about going far afield. And in so doing, we were able to take advantage of the inherent knowledge and wisdom that exist in those communities, couple it with innovation from new science and new engineering coming forward, and together it's a really great team, and we expect to be selling great products well into the future.
So, Mike, in the very near future, what sort of seaweed-based products can we expect to see that we can access here on Vancouver Island?
So Cascadia Seaweed was previously in the consumer packaged goods business under the Cove Ocean Foods, and we were selling a delicious, nutritious variety of puffs and chips and snacks like that. We made an important business decision. We could not scale as fast as we wanted if we just went with the consumer packaged goods, and that's led us to the shift into bovine feed for cow health and for biostimulant products. So the very next product you'll be able to see is starting around March and April. We'll be selling a liquid seaweed extract, which is awesome to help plants grow and fight abiotic and biotic stress, much better outcomes. And the good news is what you're adding to the soil and to your plant is an entirely natural product. So you can understand the kind of goodness that will bring to the crops folks are growing. And that'll be the next touch point for consumers.
Yeah, people, planet, profits, all a part of the three-pronged plan that you guys have. It's all on the website. I would encourage you to go there and check it out at Cascadia Seaweed online about that. So people always, I know, say to you guys, can I invest in this? Can I get a piece of this? Bill, where's that at right now?
Yes, we've been very fortunate to be, over the last 2 years, to have raised about $7 million in equity investment. This is a very expensive business to start from zero and work your way in. And like any business, Bruce, you would think, okay, I'll give myself a 20-year runway. But we believe so strongly that we have to provide new products yesterday to mitigate somewhat the crisis in the climate. It's really important for us to continue to raise money. We're at the stage now where we're looking for senior investors, and we will be entering the venture capital market. As tough as a market is right now, it's extremely challenging to be raising money, and valuations are at a significant low point. However, we have folks that strongly believe that we have to invest in the planet. We have to invest in a change of attitude and a change of availability for these green organic products. We're counting on that, and we're continuing to raise money. Folks can contact us. Obviously, we wouldn't say no to people that want to invest, but by and large, we have to get to the next level. Bruce, we need $200 to $300 million to make this into a sector over the next 10 years. It won't be just Cascadia. We have to ensure it's profitable, so that we can get more companies to come in and invest, and then greater investment will mean we'll create more jobs. We've gone on record as saying the seaweed sector, if it's allowed to roll out and across all the products it could deliver, it could add $1 billion to BC's GDP. It could come with 30,000 jobs, directs and indirects, if it is allowed to grow and if we invest appropriately in the development of this sector.
Find out more on the website that's on your screen right now, Cascadia Seaweed. Bill Collins and Mike Williamson also have won a number of awards for this, including the Chamber of Commerce's Sustainable Business Award. Gentlemen, thank you for your time, continued success, and thanks for being with us today.
Thanks very much, Bruce.
And that's it for now. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.